Okay, so today I'm going to paint a little landscape here. It links into our next challenge for those that want to take part. And the challenge is going to be all about a place that has kept you sane. I think the only exercise that we've been able to do is walk. Everybody's been walking everywhere. So we want to know where you've been walking, and we'd like to see where you've been walking. So this challenge for the next month is your COVID walks. This is one of my walks. It's in a field just at the back of where I live here down in Hawthorne, place at Dale. And I tend to go there with the dogs because there's lots of space to have them gallop around, and there's not too many people. And usually if you find other people, they've got spaniels and labradors and things, so they understand that big dogs need to gallop about. So first of all, what I've got is nice big sky here. I've got a tree, and in the distance I've got the sea and some fields running right up to the foreground here, which is dried long grasses. Let me see if I can show you what I'm painting. That's my picture. Ooh, that's my picture there. Beautiful view on a summer's day. So first of all, a nice big sky. So, do you know, it's a while since I painted with my watercolours. I've been so busy doing oils and acrylics. But here goes. Like riding a bike. I'm just going to wet my sky. I'm working on a block here, so I don't have to tape the paper down. It's quite useful, especially when you're in a hurry or when you've run out of tape. So I can just paint directly onto this. I just hope the clips that are holding the block in place last out, and this board doesn't come tumbling down. So when you're wetting for your sky, make sure you wet your paper thoroughly and evenly, but don't oversaturate it. Your paper will only take so much water, and then it'll start to lift and buckle, and the water will pour off the edges. And if the water pours off the edges, then your colour's going to pour off the edges as well. So I always think about feeding your paper with the water, give it a good drink, push it in so that the paper goes right into the surface. As always with my skies, and I'm working upright, I start in the base. That's because the water's running down, colour's running down, and the colours will then run into each other a lot easier than if I try and start at the top and then stack them in. So it's yellow ochre and a little bit of alizarin crimson there to put a bit of warmth in. That will mix with my blues, and I put them on to give us some nice purple casts. And I'm just going to use ultramarine blue. On the top. Load my brush up again. I want plenty of colour. I'm not going to drag the colour too far. Keep going back for more paint. And then just cast your brush all the way through. Don't stop. Keep going to the end. Bit more colour? I think so. Bit more colour. Let's have this nice and strong. There we go, that's better. All the way through. And then I can lift my clouds out. Got a nice big tree in here, so I'm going to remove some of the colour where I want that tree to go. I want little bits of sky behind the tree, but I don't want to have too much colour in there. So that it taints my greens, so we'll just take that out. couple of little clouds in the sky here. Take some colour out, drop it in there. So when you're lifting your clouds out, make sure you've squeezed your brush out and you don't have any bits of, you don't have too much water in there. And you want to be able to squeeze your brush out through your fingers so that your brush is quite dry, and then it'll lift up the water off your paper. Just moving those clouds around a little bit. Take the water out of there because that's my sea. I don't want my sea to be yellow. So there. Work as quick as you can. That way you're going to get some nice soft edges in your sky. If you leave it too long, you might find that you end up with a hard edge. If you still want a little bit of white out of your sky and your paper's starting to dry, revert to your tissue. And I'm just taking a bit more out where I want this tree to go. You can use your tissue just to top off any white clouds if you feel like you haven't quite got what you want there. I actually prefer to lift out with my brush if I can, because it gives me a softer edge. Just put a little bit of cloud there disappearing at the top. I do know I'm going to have a mark where I put those clips, so bring my picture down a little bit. Right, so that's that. And I just need to let that dry for a moment before I go any further, just for a few seconds. Bring my picture back up. The trouble with these iPads, they keep going off. Right, in the distance here I have some distant because they're in the distance, distant trees and things. I'm sticking with my purples, my blue and my pink, and I just want to put the suggestion of trees and things in the distance. Now this may soften and run up into my sky a little bit, but at this point I don't mind because it's distant, and if it looks a little bit hazy then that's fine. It's going to be better. Usually you don't see clear focus of anything that's distant, so that works quite well, doing a little background like that. From there, what I can see on this picture is a variety of rooftops and things like that. Now, you can't really see an awful lot of detail. I'm just going to put in colour to represent that, and then maybe I can go back into it later and put in a suggestion of some roof shapes or something, but it's just suburbia looking down there from the fields. And if I put an odd bit of distant green, from a distant green I'm using the blue and the yellow ochre to give me the suggestion of some bits of trees dotted in that distant landscape. Keep my colours fairly weak here. Don't want too much colour in there. Back to my purpley colour again. And I'm just going to put some shadow in here as well, just the tip of my brush, little bits of colour, just dropping it in. Keep those colours cool so that it's all in the distance. Take that up a little bit higher there. Let me see what have I got. What have I got? Yeah. Just some little bits of weak colour in there. That's too strong. You see how strong that is? Rinse my brush off, dab it on my cloth, and just stretch it out. And again, my distant purple colour, just to suggest bits of things in the distance. Moving forward, I have some hedgerows, and again they're in the distance, so we don't want them too strong. I'm using my blue and my yellow ochre, and I'm keeping my green on the blue side for these distant hedges. And just want to, again, if it runs up into the colours that I've just put on, I'm not worried at this stage. Keeps it all kind of out of focus. As colours go away, you see less detail, just see shapes. Unless there's a bright sunlight bouncing in that particular direction, the colours are much more muted in the distance as well. Probably that's slightly stronger here. Just put a little bit more pigment in. It's still quite blue, and let it fade away as it goes off in the distance. Just little touches with the brush. And I'm going to continue that over here. Little trees and things over here. Just going to add a little bit more yellow to that. Still just the yellow ochre. In the distance, I can just see a tiny little field of green over here. I'm just going to put that in. And then we've got more hedges. Just dropping these in. I have a few more rooftops. Over here. So again, just a little suggestion of roof colour in there. more hedgerows. What I want to do is I'm coming further into the foreground, so I'm just going to introduce a little bit of yellow into that. So I'm picking up my cadmium yellow and I'm just starting to make this hedge colour just a little bit greener. That just kind of underline these a little bit. It just helps to sink them down onto the ground. This one's coming towards us this way. And some more hedges. That. There's a bunch of trees here, so the hedge goes behind the trees. Then off into the distance over there. We have a field here. It's a grassy run. I'm going to use my yellow ochre with a touch of cadmium yellow in to brighten that up a little bit, and a little bit of blue. And that's going in there. A little bit of water on my brush now to carry that. It's just colour in the distance. It runs down here. It's a track. Bit of set aside that I walk around. Walk all the way along there, up through here. Sometimes I go along there and around a big field over here, depending on how much time I've got. Other times I come right up and walk for miles around these fields. It's lovely. I can't tell you where they are because I might get too busy. Haha. A little bit more green, just slightly changing the shade of my green here. And I just want to have this running into that shade there. This field painting around the tops of these trees that I've got on this hedge line here. I've got a hedge line there, and I'm just putting in some of my yellow ochre and ultramarine blue mixes, and into that I'm running in a little bit of burnt sienna, and that's just going to give me this kind of dull green. And in here we've just got some more bits of field. It's a set aside patch, this. All sorts of bits of weed and things growing in there. This one over here, it's done late summer, this photograph, and that one over there is already ploughed. Got a colour called Pearlian Maroon, and I'm using that with a little bit of burnt sienna, a bit more of the maroon in, and I'm just going to paint that area there with that nice maroony colour. Leaving little bits of light and then adding little bits of stronger colour just to give it a bit of variation in there. And then I've got some more greens, some brighter greens, so I'm up in my yellow. Put this in here. Again, I've got a line of trees here, so I'm just dotting this. Just make that slightly greener. You can probably hear my rattly old washing machine going on in the background. It sounds like it's going to explode. Not very well. It'll have to keep going. Alright, let's take some of that out a bit. Some of that over here. Remember, as you're painting along here, if you keep your colours nice and light, you can always go back into or over what you've painted. I've got a little back run forming there, but not too worried because it's going to be a hedge. Another hedge. I think I can probably put the sea in now as well. Ultramarine blue. Let me put that little bit of that maroon into it just to quieten it down a little bit. Just test it on my test sheet because it's important to have a test sheet. That's just a strip of sea. Don't. Go over my tree for now. Yeah. Can't really see the waves from here. You can just see the sea. Where's my lift out brush? Get that straight away. Little accidents happen. Just take that out with my brush. Yeah. And I'm just going to cut back through my tree as well. Right, that's that bit done. Well, I'm truly sorry, but I forgot to hit the record button for that little bit. So let me explain to you what I have done at this stage. And it's really more of the same in the way of the hedgerows. So I've put in these hedgerows around this field here and these little trees. And I just use my tip of my brush, some ultramarine blue and burnt sienna to put a couple of little tree trunks in there. Excuse me. And then some of my ultramarine blue, yellow ochre for the hedging, and in places I've added a little bit of cadmium yellow just to liven that a little bit so that we get some lighter shades of green there as well as we come up the field and get a bit closer. We have our stubble field and a little bit of set aside track that goes around the outside. And I've just used the green that I was using here in the trees, a lot more water, and just painted that around the edge like that. Tiny bit of weak yellow ochre in there as well. I haven't spread the paint too smoothly there. I've let it just puddle and form different shades in its own colour, so that it's not completely flat, but not too much detail either. Here, big wash of yellow ochre, slightly stronger in places, so I put a wash down of yellow ochre, pick up a little bit more colour, slice that through, a little bit of my hedge green in there as well, and then this is my ultramarine blue and my maroon, or you could use burnt sienna, something that's going to give you a darker colour, and just the suggestion of a track there, maybe where the tractor has ran down. I do apologise that I didn't have my camera running, but I think I'll do some written notes with this one, and I'm sure you can manage to get that field in. I'm going to do the tree now, and I'll show you how to do that. The camera's running. You can always have a look at my tree exercise on, I think there's a link on my website, on the SAA page when they did a recording of me painting a tree, or we can just stick in and watch this one. The tree's in shadow, so not a lot of colour in it. Ultramarine blue, and what I'm trying to do is create a dark shadowy colour. Let's just go with burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, because it's easy and I know everybody's got it. Right, slightly more burnt sienna to begin with, but we don't want it too brown. And I want to paint in this tree because there's lots of foliage to go on it, so it's really just building a frame to hang on. Slightly grey, I want to put a bit more burnt sienna into that, make it a bit warmer. If you've got too much blue and it gets a little bit too black. There's quite a lot of ivy and stuff growing up this tree. Just going to stipple a little bit of colour here and leave gaps so I can stipple some green in there as well. Ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow, tiny touch of burnt sienna. Just going to stipple that in there. Seems to grow up. That tree trunk. Just going to put a bit more yellow into that, make it a bit brighter. It doesn't matter whether you start with the light or the dark with this, because I'm actually just putting it into white space, and then the colours just melt together to give the suggestion of some ivy leaf there. Slightly wider there. So going back into my existing branches and pulling out a new one as I stretch my branches out there. So I'll go back in there, match up the brush mark, pull out a new stroke. There's a few branches coming out of here. Could do with just a bit more paint. It's getting a little bit weak, that. But better to go in a little bit weak, and then you can always add some more colour than going too strong and have it too overpowering and the paint not flowing. If you make your paint too thick, it doesn't flow very well. To add up there. Branches do cross over each other. They don't just go in their own space. So we can have some branches crossing over each other. And sienna, ultramarine blue. Not worrying too much about putting in some shadow into these because it's all pretty much in shadow. And the mixes that I'm doing, because I'm mixing kind of fresh each time, it's slightly different colour anyway. It helps to give a little bit of variety. And again, we've got some of this ivy going up the tree here. So let's put some more green in here, different shades of green. Just stir that in. Creeps its way up the top of the tree. Just add a few more as we extend the branches, so I'll extend the ivy creeping up there as well. A little bit of tree behind here as well, so we're just going to fill this corner in a bit with some more foliage. There's a hedge running up here, so I'll just map that in a little bit. Just using the belly of the brush just to put a few little indicators in for that hedge there. I'm going to continue painting this tree like this. Going back over it in places, make it a little bit stronger. Varying the mix just a little bit. Quite dark in here. Oops. Trying to do everything at super fast speed for you so you're not sitting. A bit like watching paint dry when you're watching the same thing over and over again. I'll go as fast as I can for you. Building this tree up. I'm going to brighten this up just a little bit because there is a tiny bit of sunlight hitting in here. So let's just up the yellow a little bit. Try and catch some sunlight coming in here as well. It's hitting the top of this hedge. It's in shadow on this side, but it is hitting the top of this hedge. So we just want to put a little bit of sunshine coming from the back of this into this tree. Just using the belly of the brush here. To extend some foliage into the tree itself. Okay, just a bit darker green while that's still damp. Just stick that in to what would be the underside of each of those clusters of leaves. Using the belly of the brush gives you that nice broken brush mark. Keeping the point of my brush up over dragging the belly of the brush across the paper to give you that nice round top on the tree. Add some more blue. I can go into the marks that we've just made while that's still wet. Just do it at a stage at a time, then you'll be able to get the wet in wet there. Get that a little bit soft. The green's going between light and dark, so just add some more yellow to lighten it up. Fill in just a little bit there, and a little bit more with a canopy on it. Go around the edges there a little bit. Make it darker, put some blue in. Darker again, put some more blue in. And of course, as you're putting more paint in, it makes the pigment stronger. So when the pigment's stronger, it looks darker. If you keep the paint watery, you don't build up the strength of your colour. Just a mixture of light and dark there being cast through that tree. Maybe I could get my rigger and we can just add a few more branches to join these clusters up. Burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. Keep the colours simple. Okay, so what we can do is we can add some little branches in here to join all of these things up here. Just here and there, just add a few more. When you add a branch to a tree, try to go into your branch and then pull a new branch out rather than just tag it on, because it really does make a difference. Helps to make it all look joined up. So that branch going through there. A bit stronger there. This one here, maybe we can, small branch coming through here, through here. Just helping to add in a bit more dimension to this tree. Hold my rigger, holding my rigger further down helps it to jump around, produce the nice springy tree branches. Need a bit more mix. A little bit stronger, more colour in the mix. I'm sort of go into here and flick in the belly of my rigger. Not that your rigger's got much of a belly, it's a bit of a skinny one. But laying the brush down flat and just flicking helps to create little wispy bits in your old tree. Helps to just strengthen up the edges of your branches as well. Not go mad. I always go mad when I'm doing demonstrations so everybody gets to see. I don't do half as many brush strokes when I'm painting just for me. But I try and repeat what I'm doing so that everybody can So you can see that there, what I'm doing, just building up those. May go back to it later, but we'll call it enough for now because I think we need to move on with the next stage. Right, just the foreground to do. And this is just a combination of grasses and wildflowers and weeds of things. I've put a little bit of masking fluid on here, so I do have some little bit reserved paper. I'm starting off with just a light, very light green, similar to what I used around here. So just lots of water into the green that I've been using. Get that nice wispy green. Some yellow ochre. Just going to put that in. Just scumble it in a little bit. When I say scumble, just flick it in. Making paint a little bit stronger now, same colours, a little bit more paint in the mix. Just want to scumble in some shadowy greens in there, just because it's just rough grass. Just varying the shades of green and gradually increasing the strength. So you've got the soft colours underneath and then the stronger colours just giving a bit more shape. Split my brush open a little bit, try and get a little bit of broken grass marks like that along the edge. And while that's still wet, little round brush, I just want to be dropping in some bits of wildflower, clover, you could also spatter, just tap in there, just to create some little bits of wildflowers and such. It's always nice to put something, a bit of colour there. Two bits of poppies growing in the field perhaps. Careful not to overdo it. Get carried away with these techniques. Maybe just a bit more shadow. I made a kind of purpley colour here, but ultramarine blue. And my permanent rose, which I've used in the flowers. Just add a bit of water to that. And then I've still got this little bit of hedgerow at the side here. Finish off in this corner here. On my photograph it's quite dark, there's not really much to see. If you paint just a dark splodge, it doesn't quite look the same as it does on a photograph, so just creating little shapes that might suggest it's a foliage. dark colour just coming out here a little bit. Create a little bit of shadow off that tree. A little bit of shadow overhanging there. Do that through. That shadow colour is just a dark green, same colours I've got in there, and I think it's probably sufficient. Just tap my brush on here and create some grasses. Do the same with a different colour. At the end of the summer you get all those little bits of tall grasses that are all going to seed. I think that's probably about it for that little picture. I don't think we need to do much more. We can go into overkill and ruin it. You just need something in the sky around those trees. Little bird. Some form of wildlife living here. I may go back in and review this with fresh eyes and put in a few more branches, but other than that I would say it's done. So yeah, I know this spot so well. The first time I walked up the hill coming into this and got the top there and stood and looked across at the sea and the countryside, just so pretty. So all I've got to do now is, when this dries, is take that masking fluid off. I don't want to cook the masking fluid with a hairdryer, but if I blow it a little bit, it'll maybe have to dry it off a little bit quicker. Found if you put too much heat on masking fluid, it sticks it harder. Cool. That's just about it.